And thank you for joining this exciting session. We're really looking forward to it. We have some great speakers coming up. So the session is hosted by the Manitoba FASD Coalition together with the Manitoba FASD Family Network. Before we proceed, I just want to share that we acknowledge that the Manitoba FASD Coalition gathers and works on the treaty land of Manitoba, traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Assiniboine, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of Métis Nation. Okay, I think we're ready to go, Dorothy. You're on mute. Dorothy, you're on mute.
I'm still on mute, yes.
Okay, good.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Andrea. I was going to do some of that, so that's great. You've done it. Failure, follower. I just want to be smart. I'm a total waste of time and effort. Worthless. I'll never get a job. Not worthwhile. Disappointment. Stupid. Ignorant. Thief. Retarded, crazy, despicable. These are just some of the words that I have heard over the past years working with children and adolescents after a diagnosis is made. And this so saddens my heart. And this is so dear to my heart, today's presentation. How can we change this message of doom and gloom into one of hope and potential after a diagnosis is made? Today, we as a committee in planning this session, we recognize that conversations with children and youth about their diagnosis of FASD can sometimes be really difficult. So for this session, we have three panelists joining us. We have Sharon Wazney, the social worker at the Manitoba FASD Center. We have Lori Stetina, a parent of an adult with FASD and an author, and grandmother Pahan, an Indigenous grandmother who will be speaking to us, and how we can, giving us ways to share respectful conversations with children and youth about their diagnosis of FASD. The focus will be on using strength-based strategies to have ongoing conversations with your child and youth about their diagnosis in ways that promote dignity and enhance self-esteem. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Her name is Sharon Wazney. She is a social worker at the Manitoba FASD Center. In her role at the FASD Center, Sharon meets with families to help them prepare for their FASD assessment, as well as supports family after the assessment has occurred. She has worked with many families who experience the challenge of letting their child know they have FASD. Sharon's position at the FASD Center is half-time, and she also has a half-time position at the Child Development Clinic. Sharon, just one more thing before you get started. We will ask you to enter any of your questions or comments into the chat room. So we will not be stopping to ask the speakers question after their presentation. We have a lot of information. We have three speakers, and so we will make the time for questions and comments in the chat room after the third speaker. So I am not going to waste any more time. I'm going to pass it over to you, Sharon. Thank you for speaking with us today.
If you want to introduce yourself while I'm doing this.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. And I have next to me Laura, who is part of our team, and she's providing me some technology help today. So I'm really appreciating your help, Laura.
My pleasure.
Okay, so thanks, Dorothy. And in my experience as a social worker with the center, I know that many parents express feeling very worried and stressed by the idea of telling their child they have an FASD diagnosis. And for some people, this stress is so high that it results in the discussion either being avoided or not done at all. I've met many parents and foster parents, and this includes some CFS workers whose children or children in care were diagnosed several years ago, and they haven't yet told their child as they are waiting for the right moment, which has never come up. Or they've decided not to tell their child because they're really concerned about their child's reaction. Or if they're the birth mom, they are worried about hurting their relationship with their child. So part of this presentation, so my part of this presentation is only 20 minutes. So I plan to try to fly through my slides. Even if I don't get through them all though, or do so too quickly, just to let you know, I'm providing Kim 2 handouts that cover this topic in a much more in-depth way. One handout was created by CAN FASD, and the other was created by team members at the FASD Center. So she'll be emailing these handouts at the end of the presentation or on Monday. And in the FASD handout, the questions are on the slide are kind of what gets covered in this handout. So questions like, why is it important to tell? Is there a best time? Why is it so hard to talk about? Who should talk to the child? What words do I use? How do I explain the alcohol information? And what if my child becomes upset? And at the end of the complete presentation, hopefully there'll be some time for questions or an opportunity to share your own experience on this topic. And if there's time, I've also asked my coworker, Rianne, who works with youth here, to give an example of the kind of conversation she helps parents have with their teenagers prior to coming for an assessment, and then afterwards if they receive a diagnosis. So to get started, I'm going to show a 4-minute video clip of a young woman named Crystal. Crystal was interviewed by Jeff Noble, who's a consultant in the field of FASD. And Crystal is attending university, and she has a diagnosis of FASD. So this video is 17 minutes long, but I'm just going to show 5 minutes of it. And in the clip, she initially describes some of her challenges with having FASD, but then she talks about how eventually, when she understood the diagnosis, how helpful this was for her. Okay, now I need to help. Oh, it's this one. No, that's not it either. Uh-oh, video is not playing.
Can you all, oops. Can you all see that? You would not believe how many times we practiced this.
No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't understand what was going on, especially when it was like math, chem, anything really abstract.
Are you able to see the clip right now?
Yes.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we went and like I sat down with my aunt and uncle and they told me that I had been tested, but I don't really remember it because I was so young and I didn't understand.
Right.
And that's when it all kind of started clicking and I started looking at stuff online and like talking with them, and I started talking with the youth advocate. And that's when I noticed like, oh, I might be because of this. I might be forgetful because of this. And it all kind of hit me in a few years, I think.
Yeah. So when you say it hit you, like, how were you feeling before the diagnosis? Was it a relief to get it, or were you growing up thinking, why am I like this? Like, what's?
I I noticed I had more like issues than some kids. Like I would get in fights with my parents and stuff like that over things like I would forget conversations, I would forget to do something. I wouldn't understand like if I did one thing wrong, the next thing is like the same thing as the first time. I always thought it was something different. So I'd get really frustrated and I would struggle with emotions, especially because I am adopted. So I got introduced to a new sister in my life, and we had a lot of emotional problems because I think she was younger. So sometimes I would go to her level of emotion, or I'd get very frustrated with her. And I noticed other kids didn't do that, especially as I got older. Like my levels of emotions and my thinking processes were a little bit slower. So I think a lot of it was frustrating until the diagnosis and until I could like learn how to cope with the emotions and find ways to let out how I'm feeling and stuff like that. So a lot of emotional regulation, I think.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So
Yeah.
you would get like really ticked off really quickly?
Oh yeah, me and my sister would get into fights over nothing. Like she would just, I don't know, she'd take the front seat and I'd be like, why are you taking the front seat? I'm the oldest. And she was like, because I can, because you know, she's got a personality on her, right?
Right.
And I'd get so angry over that. And then 5 minutes later, I'm okay, but I'll say something that I didn't mean, or I'll snap at her,
Yeah.
and she's still hurting, right? And like I'm already over it. So it was really hard to like regulate that. Like even probably now, sometimes we bicker and whatever. I just like to think that it's sisters, not just
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
my own regulation, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've gotten a lot of issues.
So that's okay. So does everybody else. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said memory was one of them, right? And that's a primary characteristic. So that's
Yeah.
a common trait. And you said you would forget conversations.
Yeah.
Would you ever hear them wrong?
Oh yes. I would be like, no, you said this, and she's like, no, I said to put it over here. Like we'd have conversations of like just moving stuff back and forth between the house and the garage, and I'd put it on the wrong end of the garage, and my aunt would be like, I just told you where to put it. I was like, I really thought you said the right side of the garage. She's like, no, I said the left. And like just really simple things like that always slipped by me. It was always the simple things, and then it would just build up to like, well, why aren't I understanding this, and why aren't I getting it, kind of thing. So
were you frustrated by that?
oh yeah, like I didn't understand. Like at first I thought maybe other families were this way, and then once I started building more friends in school and stuff, I realized I was the only one this way. And like there was definitely a time period with all those frustrating conversations and stuff that I felt really isolated because I didn't understand like why I couldn't get it, right? Like it was kind of a maturity thing too, because when you are told that you're one way as a kid, it's on your mind, right? And you're like, even though you're told you're acting because of, I think, a label or a disability, you're like, oh, but maybe it's just me, or maybe it's my fault. And so like there was a long time there where it was just really frustrating. So
And then you get the diagnosis, and was that a relief?
I think so. Like I definitely felt like when I sat down and talked about it some more, I definitely was like, okay, at least now I can reach out to resources and stuff that might be able to help, and I might be able to talk to teachers. And I put it some more, I definitely was like, okay, at least now I can reach out to resources and stuff that might be able to help, and I might be able to talk to teachers.
Stop sharing.
Okay, you're back.
Where am I here?
There you go.
Okay, so I picked this video because Crystal's story is one example of how helpful it can be for a child youth to have information about their diagnosis. And for Crystal, as you saw, it allowed her to understand why she was having a harder time learning than her friends, and why she would become more emotionally dysregulated than her friends. But more importantly, or as importantly, it allowed her to reframe her thinking from I am a problem to I have a problem. And someone thinking that they are the problem is much harder on their self-esteem and self-concept, and it can lead to other issues like depression and other mental health issues than someone knowing instead that they learn differently, and that there are solutions though that can help them overcome some of the problems they are having. And it also allows a person who knows about their diagnosis well to allow for self-advocacy. So in the video, Crystal talks about getting a youth mentor, and that person helped talk to teachers. But by the time she's in grade 12, she's talking to teachers on her own. And she also shares in the video that she felt pretty isolated. And she ended up getting connected to other teens with FASD, and she makes some friendships through this group, which helps decrease the isolation. And I think here I can say that I'm doing okay with technology. So I'm going to take off my mask and hopefully carry on without needing any more help. But Laura, you're going to be nearby, right? Okay. Okay, so why is telling so hard? You know, if you think about it, you know, anytime we tell our children something that might create hardship for them, you know, it's hard to do. So telling a child they have FASD, you know, is even more so. And parents often feel a cycle of grief reactions similar to other losses. And they also have their own feelings about the diagnosis. And in addition to this being a diagnosis that means the child's having lots of difficulty, there's also huge stigma, unfortunately, associated with this diagnosis. Parents often feel lots of shame and guilt and blame and judgment by themselves, towards themselves, but also by others. So they're very concerned that their child's reaction may be very negative and harsh. And as I mentioned, that's often a huge barrier to why they avoid the conversation or don't have it at all. So the next few slides are a few tips on kind of how to, you know, help maybe talk to the child go as smooth as possible. And one suggestion is always to wait until a parent has had a chance to process the diagnosis information on their own and resolve some of their own feelings. And it may not be a case of resolving, but have them kind of less raw, because children are very reactive to difficult information, or children are less reactive to difficult information if adults are very matter of fact about it. And when talking to the child, you want to be able to leave that child with a positive impression of themselves. And so being emotionally neutral is really important. And sometimes it helps talk to the child with a support person present. But the key piece is that the person who tells the child should have a positive relationship with them. And ideally, it's someone who also has some knowledge about FASD, because sometimes kids or youth have myths about what FASD is. And it's important to be able to clarify and give them accurate information. So in terms of, is there a best time? Every child's different, and every situation might be different, but sometimes it's an opportunity to share the information during what we call a teachable moment. And that would be where the child is experiencing some frustration, and they're already kind of becoming aware that they're learning or behaving differently. And so then letting them know about their diagnosis at that time in a series of conversations. And also prior to adolescence, if possible. And that's because kids who are diagnosed young, some parents will think that the older they are, the better it will be to tell them. But in fact, sometimes that's even more challenging because adolescents want to be the same as their peers. They turn to their peers for support, less so their parents. And if they're already experiencing some acting out behaviors, then there could be safety concerns with telling an adolescent about their disability. And so safety planning would need to occur. There's a different story though with adolescents who get the diagnosis when they're teens, because often that can go fairly well. We have a social worker at our clinic that prepares and helps the family prepare the youth for the assessment, and then also helps give information in a sensitive, positive, hope promoting way to the teenager. So that often goes well. Okay, I'm being given my 5-minute warning. So sharing the information, tips on how to share it is to talk about how everybody has their own strengths and challenges. And also highlighting that they are more like other youth and children than different. And ensuring you communicate at their developmental age level, not their chronological age level. And you can use the FASD report and a rainbow sheet that is often given to families at the end of an assessment to really help identify their strengths, but also what they find tricky. The alcohol information can be explained very neutrally, that FASD can occur if a fetus is exposed to alcohol. And if appropriate for age, sometimes it's helpful for them to understand why women use alcohol in pregnancy. And also it's helpful to have the youth understand that while alcohol is a reason for their diagnosis, everybody is affected by genetics and by life experiences. And so the diagnosis is always multifactorial. Reactions of youth. Just to interrupt myself, Dorothy, can you give me a 1-minute warning as well? Because I'm not sure when I got that 5-minute warning. So common reactions are, it's a surprise sometimes that children and youth are sometimes not very interested in what they're told. They kind of hear the information and they move on. Some are accepting and feel relief. They may also, though, feel grief reactions that they cycle through. Sometimes they do have complex feelings towards a parent that requires kind of more support, perhaps from an elder or from a family member or a professional. And often though, if they're upset, this feeling is pretty short-lived. And in a parents group that I helped facilitate, we heard often how parents would say their kids would get angry at them when they're in trouble for other reasons. And then they would say something hurtful about having FASD. But then 5 minutes later, they're back to normal and life is back to normal. And the parents really realized over time that they are not sure their children even remember what they've said to them, or if they even meant what they've said to them. And if responding to a youth who becomes upset is very similar to how you would respond to the child in ways that you've been responding to them in the past. So you're validating their feelings. You're using strategies that help calm the child down. Oh, that's my own timer. Okay, so Dorothy, can you go off mute and can you let me know how many minutes I have, if any, left?
Yes, you have take another minute just to
Okay, to wrap up.
summarize. Yeah.
Okay, so what I quickly want to share, because it's and again, you're going to get handouts that have more information than I presented, but there is the rainbow sheet that the FASD Center has available that can kind of help somebody break down a report that they have on their child. But there's also a booklet that the FASD Center did a pilot project on, and we had a social worker do this booklet with several children, and it was helpful, very helpful in helping them understand kind of what their strengths are, and all about how this child may learn differently, and how also this child could use kind of support and help from other people, things that they're good at, things that are hard. Anyways, I can't go through the whole booklet, but what I want to say is that this booklet is something that if participants today would like to have a copy of, that it can be made available to them. Kim will be sending out my contact information in a future email. And so if anyone wants a template, and it is a template, it's meant to be kind of used depending on the child, and it just provides kind of a guideline, then I can email a template to somebody interested. But I just want to be able to provide a little bit of mentorship when this booklet is provided to people. So I think my time is up, and I really appreciate being asked to do this presentation. And yeah, thank you.
Wow, Sharon, thank you so much. You have given us so much information crammed into so little time. Really appreciate this. And you've said some really good things for helping us start that conversation. And I just wanted to mention, and I think you did mention at some point, that just to emphasize, this is not just one conversation you have with a child or the adolescent. This is ongoing and will change throughout the course of their lifetime. And for them to have someone knowledgeable around they can ask questions to or help them on this journey is really helpful. So thank you again, Sharon. Our next speaker is Lori, and Lori Stetina. And Lori Stetina is the mother of a 25-year-old man. Oh my goodness, I've known him since he's been a year old. I can't believe where the time has gone. Her son was diagnosed shortly after his birth and has been with her for the majority of his life. When Ryan was in kindergarten, Lori was looking for materials to help talk to him and his classmates about FASD and to help him and them better understand what it means and to improve relationships between them. At that time, most of the literature that was available was outdated and did not really convey what she wanted to say. This began the journey of writing and publishing the book, But Michael Makes Me Laugh, a tool that has been used throughout Canada as a conversation starter to educate people about FASD, as well as individuals with FASD. Ryan and Lori continue their FASD journey together as he moves through the stages of his life. I just wanted to comment that Lori will be reading from the book, I guess, towards the end of your session or whenever you let us know you're ready for the PowerPoint. And information on ordering her book will be posted in the chat room if you are interested in obtaining one. And you can either pick it up at the Sky Center or we can mail it out to you. So thanks, Lori, for joining us, and I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Can you see me, Dorothy?
No,
Okay,
We
what do I
can't.
need to do to make that happen?
I think if Kim, if you would take the presentation off for now and put Lori on the screen, is that possible? Just to stop the sharing?
Okay, somebody said they can see me. Can you see
Oh.
me now?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna get right to it because I've got 20 minutes and I've got a lot to say. So as Dorothy indicated, my son Ryan has been with me for most of his life. He came to me from a family that I was familiar with, and he came to me with a diagnosis, which wasn't really neither here nor there back then because I didn't really understand. I knew that FASD was caused by consuming alcohol during pregnancy. Other than that, I really didn't know much about it. I kind of thought, okay, well, there's going to be some difficulties. And let's be honest, when children or when they're babies, most of the issues that we were experiencing back then were not really behavioral. They were more health issues. He was diagnosed with failure to thrive, and he had just a depleted immune system. And so we spent a lot of his early years in the emergency room, in the hospital, and kind of dealing with that stuff. He was going to the eating center, and so he wasn't gaining weight, and that was kind of our life. And I thought, okay, well, you know, this is what we're dealing with. And then I think as the behavioral component started to manifest, and as some of the health issues started to get better, I really wasn't fully aware, because as we all do, we make these teeny weeny little daily adjustments to each other within a home, and we don't even realize that we've done them. So I think that I was just doing very small modifications to our life to accommodate Ryan and what was going on with him. And I wasn't, if somebody had asked me what kind of behavioral issues Ryan was having, I don't know that I would have answered that he was having any, because we were very self-contained at home. And I think that when Ryan went into school, it was a big wake-up call for me, because now he's interacting with other kids and with other adults, and our life was far less contained. So when he started kindergarten, there were a few things going on that I was like, okay, you know, I mean, what parent doesn't have behavioral issues with a 5-year-old? But Ryan he was still a little bit sickly at times, and he'd been home for 3 days. And I took him back to school, and we were just kind of at the back of the room where the cubbies were, putting away his boots and his coat and stuff. And there were 2 little girls standing at the back there, and one of them looked at the other one and said, like, "Oh God, Ryan's back." And I was shocked. I was incensed. I was probably angry, and most certainly hurt, because I mean, all we really want for our kids, you know, we want them to get an education. We, you know, definitely want them to be successful, but I think more than anything, we want them to be happy. And I thought to myself, how could he be happy if the other kids don't like him? I mean, that's kind of, especially at the kindergarten level, that's kind of all we really want for them, is to become socialized and make friends and be happy. So I was dropping him off. I went home and I just bawled my eyes out. I was just devastated at this incident that had taken place. And by the time I went to pick him up that morning, because he was a half day, it had occurred to me that as adults, we struggle sometimes with the behavioral issues of children, particularly kids with FASD. How hard must it be for these other little 5-year-olds to process that information that they really don't understand, you know? And so somehow during that course of time, it occurred to me that we have to have a conversation with these kids. And in the absence of an explanation or in the absence of understanding, we draw our own conclusions. We do it as kids, we do it as adults. And they were drawing their own conclusions. And the conclusion was that Ryan was a brat. And so it started the seed of an idea to talk to these kids and kind of educate them and help them to understand what was going on for Ryan. So I kind of started looking for books or literature or something that I could go into the school with and begin the process of talking to the kids about Ryan and kids like Ryan and what this meant. And I never found anything that really said what I wanted to say. I wanted a message of inclusion, but I also wanted it to be woven with kindness and just everything, as Dorothy had said at the beginning, everything that I found was kind of outdated. So I thought, well, I know what I want to say. And that was the beginning of the story, But Michael Makes Me Laugh. And once the story was written, I got my sister did the illustrations for the picture or for the book. And I had gone to the school and said, now the story was at that point was like in a binder, you know, sheets in a binder, but you have to have pictures for kids. So I contacted the school and I said, hey, I want to talk to the kids in Ryan's class about FASD and what it means to have Ryan in their class. And they were all about it. So we had made a date for me to come into the school. And funny thing, the night before we were to go to the school, or I was to go to the school to read this story to the class, it occurred to me that I had never spoken to Ryan about FASD. In retrospect, that seems like a vast omission on my part, but I had never spoken to Ryan about it. So I thought, how can I go into the class and talk about Ryan when Ryan I've never had that conversation with him. So our bedtime story that night was But Michael Makes Me Laugh. And I said to Ryan that I wanted to read him a story. And I gave no further explanation. I just said, I want to read you a story. And I thought the conversation would take place after the fact. So I read him the story, But Michael Makes Me Laugh. And I said, what do you think? After we were finished, I said, what do you think of this story? And he said, I think that story's about me. And when I say that set me back, that this 5-year-old kid from reading a story was self-aware enough to know that I was talking about him or a kid like him, blew my mind. And I said, yes, actually, it is a story about you, and you do have FASD. And I want to come and talk to the kids in your class, excuse me, about this tomorrow. Are you okay with that? And the nice thing about having these conversations when the kids are really young, if it's possible, if the diagnosis happens early enough, is that they're really low key and accepting of most things. And rather than it being like a bunch of information that he has to process, it now just becomes a grain of information that's going to grow with them as they grow up. So if the information is available and the opportunity exists to talk young, I'm all about it, because and the other piece is that they're not they don't have a lot of the preconceived ideas that we maybe develop as we get older. So Ryan and I had a conversation. He was okay with me coming to the class. And we went in the next day, and basically the intro was that Ryan's mom is here to read a story for us, which was not uncommon in his class. So I read the story to the kids, and when I was finished, I asked how they liked the story, and one of the little girls in the class said, I think that story is about Ryan. Mind blown again. And so this just kind of tore down everything that I thought about what we were getting into and where we were going with this, and made me realize that this is something groundbreaking was happening, because what I thought was going to be, you know, oh, they're little kids, they're never going to understand. We need to frame this in a way that's going to make sense. And what I came away with was that children are amazingly receptive and welcoming to new information. And again, as I said, without a lot of the preconceptions that we have as adults, or the judgments that we have. And one piece that I really want to touch on, just to backstep a little bit, is that, as I said, Ryan's mother was somebody that was known to us. Both of his parents were known to us, and very much loved and respected by us. And so that was its own piece. I mean, the school was the school was its own thing, but from a family perspective, Ryan's birth mother passed away when he was 3, and she has always been held up as someone that was loved and respected. And I had somebody many years ago say to me, "You must be so angry at her for having caused all this." And I said, how could I be angry at the person that created this beautiful human being? How could I possibly be angry? She, you know, I am frustrated that Ryan lives with some of the issues that he lives with, but angry, no. I'm nothing but grateful for the birth of this boy that is so special to me. And also, one small caveat, I don't know how the diagnostic process works now, but I know that back then, a big part of getting a definitive diagnosis for kids was parental disclosure or family disclosure. And she had been very forthcoming about her alcohol consumption, which facilitated Ryan in getting a diagnosis, and has created opportunity for him in terms of support and funding when he was in school. And so in a very difficult and trying situation, she was responsible for that, because she was forthcoming and honest. And so for that, I was grateful as well. So I think it's important. I think that when we have a non-custodial parent, as she was in this particular case, I think it's important to recognize that children, whether it's spoken in words or just absorbed in feelings, they are a piece of where they come from. And so it was important to me, with everything else that Ryan was dealing with, it was important to me that he feel valued and loved and worthwhile. And that included respect and love for where he came from with both of his parents. So both of Ryan's birth parents, his biological father, died 5 years ago. And as I said, his mom died when he was really young, but he's been raised in an environment where they were included. And I think I think as a society, sometimes we think in terms of parenting that if you can't parent at 100%, then you don't get to parent at all. And the truth of the matter is that we are all on a continuum between 0 and 100%. We're all somewhere on that continuum. And I think that people should have the opportunity to parent where they are and not where we need them to be. So it's more so Ryan's dad was part of his life for as long as he was alive. And I think that that's healthy and has made a big difference for him in terms of his self-worth. And I also wanted to say that talking to your kids about FASD and talking to Ryan and as we have, as it's like talking about like sex ed or something like that. It's not one conversation, it's a conversation. There's an icebreaker or one conversation that takes place, and then there are many conversations that stem from that. And so it's not, but Michael Makes Me Laugh is not the conversation, it's the conversation starter. And it's not FASD 101 or here's everything you need to know. It's a conversation starter or an icebreaker. And I think it's important to have those icebreakers, to have those conversation starters, but to understand that that's not the, it doesn't end there, because the conversations, Ryan is 25 and every year as he develops and grows, every year is a little bit different. And being an adult with FASD out in the world, trying to find work, trying to navigate interpersonal relationships, and that is a very different world than it was when he was little. And it's interesting to me because I see his struggles, I see his difficulties, and I understand, but I also see what a huge gift he is to the world, because he's absolutely hilarious. And I do believe when God closes a door, he opens a window. And Ryan has this unbelievable sense of humor, and he's super intelligent. He is a wealth of knowledge about the things that he's interested in, and he's interested in a lot of things. So he could tell you absolutely anything about the Beatles or John Lennon or about music in general, movies, history. And often we forget that there is this origin that he has, but and then every once in a while something comes along that reminds us, oh, right, his brain works differently, because we're so accustomed to doing this dance that we've been doing for 25 years that sometimes I forget or he forgets. And we
Oh, sorry,
kind of
Lori, I just can't find the right time to get your time is up.
Okay.
Is there, I'm so sorry, I
No,
cut your sentence. Is there a way we could just quickly look through your book and have you read it to us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dorothy.
Great, no problem.
Okay, if we can get it up on the screen, that would be great.
Kim, can you put it to the first slide? Thanks. Can you see
we're
that?
just,
Lori, can you see it on your
yeah,
screen?
I can see it.
Okay. Do you want to begin, Lori?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the story is called But Michael Makes Me Laugh. And as I said, it's a conversation starter. It's not the conversation. So I hope you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
You could skip that page. This is the story about a boy named Michael. Michael is 5 years old. Michael is a great swimmer. Michael is an excellent runner. Michael knows his numbers very well. He can count up to 100 and he knows the whole alphabet. Michael also has fetal alcohol syndrome, or FAS. FAS means that Michael's birth mother drank some grown-up drinks called alcohol while Michael was in her tummy. She didn't realize that this would hurt her baby or that the damage it did would last forever. When Michael was born, he was very small. He had difficulty eating and he got sick a lot. As Michael got older, he found that he did things that other children didn't do. That is because certain parts of his brain work differently than other children's brains. He had a hard time remembering some things. Pictures often helped him to remember. Sometimes the part of his brain that reminded him not to hit or punch others didn't work properly and he forgot. Sometimes Michael's brain got mixed up and he just needed to go for a walk or to a quiet place that he knew very well. One day at school, Michael hit 3 kids in his class. He didn't mean to hit them, but his brain forgot to remind him that hitting is unacceptable. The kids that he hit were very angry, even though they didn't think Michael meant to hit them. The same day, Michael got frustrated and tore up a picture he was making. Then he did the unthinkable. He yelled at his teacher and ran out of the classroom. The teacher knew that Michael couldn't help it, but she was getting upset too. Michael was having a bad day. He hated having FAS. It made some things so difficult. Well, the principal finally caught up with Michael in the hall. By this time, the class was angry with Michael and his teacher was frustrated too. They decided that perhaps Michael needed a timeout. Just as the teacher's helper was taking Michael by the hand to leave the classroom, one of the little girls who hadn't said a single word all year stood up and said, "But Michael makes me laugh." Everyone stopped and turned. Another child stood up and said, "Yes, I like Michael. He makes me laugh too, and he's a good colorer." Someone else said, "He's got such a sweet smile, and even though he's small, he sure can run fast. He's a good counter, and he helps me do puzzles," said another child. The teacher smiled. She was pleased and proud that she had such a caring class. They understood about FAS. They could see that Michael was more like them than he was different, and that he just needed some good friends to understand his differences. By this time, Michael felt better, and he sat quietly in his place while the teacher read the class a story. And that's the story.
Well, thank
And
you.
again, it's a conversation starter. It's opened. I've traveled in the north and in many places in the province and spoken to people. And it's a great way to initiate conversations with adults as well as with children.
Thank you so much, Lori, for sharing that. I've used this book so many times over the years, and I find it such a useful tool, not only for younger kids with FASD, but for teachers and for older people as well. So it's written at a great level for all learners. So thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you.
going to move on to our third speaker, a grandmother, Pahan, and she graduated with a degree in social work from the University of Calgary. Grandmother Pahan has provided counseling support to residential school survivors and traumatized women. She has been a spiritual caregiver to incarcerated youth at the Manitoba Youth Center, as well as for incarcerated men at Stony Mountain Institution. At times, she works with children in Louis Riel and Pembina school divisions, providing the teachings and the love and the guidance of a grandmother. She is Lakota, Cree, and Métis with roots that reach back to Southern Saskatchewan and Yellowknife. In 2017, Pahan received an Honoring Our Elders Award from the Aboriginal Circle of Educators in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Pahan's vision to have a Sundance of women that honors our stolen sisters was realized in 2017 and continues to this day. So welcome, Pahan. We are very honored to have you come and give some teachings about FASD and talking to our children and youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. And Lori, what a great job you did. So thank you. That was so, so beautiful. And I think a perfect, our positioning of our speaking is perfect. So I'm here to share a few things with you that I've learned over the years. And my name is Pahan Pte San Win. It means Grace One Buffalo Woman. And right now I'm at the University of Manitoba doing a graduate degree in social work and Indigenous knowledges. So I'm going to have to add something to my bio very soon. Thank you all for being here today. And I was invited to come and share a teaching that I shared a few years ago. And who can remember what I said a few years ago, for heaven's sakes? But I'm going to try my best because this is something that I truly believe and that I think that it fits when we're talking with our relatives who have FASD. And so it's kind of like starting at the beginning. I learned this from the old people who taught me and from the many years of being in prayer and ceremony. And it talks about all of us. And so this is the teaching that I wanted to share with you today. In Creator's world, everyone has a job. And the job that each of us has is to teach and to heal. Sometimes it's easy for us to see what kind of job something has. We know the sun is there to give us light and keep us warm. We know the water is there to give us life and to cleanse. We know the squirrel buries those cones and plants the trees. But every single person as well is given a job. Creator is not just going to give a job to the natural world and forget about us. No. Creator remembers all of us and gives every person a job. And that job is about teaching and healing. There's something else that Creator gave every single person, and that's what I call seeds of potential. Seeds of potential are inside of us, and they're hidden and we can't usually see them. We don't feel them, we don't know them. But as we come into this life and have the opportunity to experience different things, sometimes those seeds of potential start to come alive. And when we're young, if we have adults around us who know about seeds of potential, that they will provide an environment so that those seeds can grow. And if they don't, those seeds will stay inside there and they'll just wait. And when that environment is just the right way that it needs to be, and with children, that's usually somewhere that's safe, where there's love, where they feel valued, where they are able to take risks, where it's interesting and stimulating, that kind of an environment, and where all their needs are looked after. They have enough food, they're warm, they have people, they have shelter. Those seeds start to grow. And as those seeds grow, they need adults around to nurture them because they're fragile. And those seeds of potential are fragile too, just like the seedlings from your garden. And as they get bigger and receive the nurturance and the protection that they need, they start to get leaves, and then we can see what they are. And as time goes on, they turn into flowers, and maybe they turn into fruit. They turn into something beautiful. And when that happens, we can see what it is. that is the gift that they are bringing this world. But the journey is not over yet. The next part of the journey is that they get to share that with the world. And when they share their gift with the world, it feels really good inside. Just like in that beautiful story that you wrote, Lori. And as we share that gift that Creator put inside of us and express that, it grows us and it makes us feel good about ourselves. And then the next step of that is we become the one who nurtures those seeds of potential inside the next person. And so for some of you, you're thinking about that, what those seeds of potential were for you. Maybe you learned to be a great piano player. Maybe you're funny like Michael and you make people laugh. Maybe you studied something, or maybe you're great at being a good friend. Whatever it is, your experience, you get to express that and get to experience what that's like. And whenever we do, because Creator put it inside of us, it always feels wonderful. And it helps to develop who we are and the way that we see ourselves. In Creator's world, when each of us has a job, lots of times our job is connected to those seeds of potential that were put inside of us. And if we think about it this way, every person that comes into your life is a teacher for you, and you are a teacher for them. And every person that comes into your life will help you to heal a little bit more, and you will help them to heal. And so in Creator's world, there's room for everyone. All the different colors and all the different variations of being a human being are exactly perfect the way that they need to be, bringing the special gifts that Creator put inside of them to share with the world. And sometimes we think that there's an ideal that people are supposed to live up to, and then anything outside of that ideal, something went wrong or they're not enough. But in Creator's world, it's not like that. Where whatever that person brings to this world is what their gift is to us. When I worked with women, when I worked with men, incarcerated men, and then most importantly, when I worked with youth at the Manitoba Youth Center, they taught me something about FASD. And I would say the youth were the most powerful teachers I've had. The ones who I spent the most time with, the ones that I had relationship with, and that we journeyed together. I learned a lot from them. And I noticed that in the group of kids that I had, there was always a number who had FASD. And I would just wait until I got to know them enough and give them enough opportunities to start seeing those little seeds of potential starting to sprout by giving them different experiences and opportunities to try things. And there was always at least one who were so exceptional at it, even the first time. And I would say, did you always know that you were good at beading? And they'd say, this is the first time I tried it. I would say, this is the first time you tried beading and you're this good. The rest of us people, we have to practice and practice. And I noticed that for each of those youth that I work with, there was something about them that they had a special gift. And so just like Lori knows by raising her beautiful Ryan, is that person is a gift. And with all of their strengths and all of their challenges, they are teaching us and they are giving us a gift. And that gift, even in the challenges, sometimes that's the biggest gift because it helps us to grow. It helps us to become more than who we have been. And in that is their role as teacher. I know sometimes we think, like I was in the role of grandmother at the Manitoba Youth Center, and people think that I'm there to teach the youth, but that they're teaching me. And they're helping me to be more human. They're helping me to know something about how can I be more helpful when someone is struggling? How can I be a better teacher? Because I found if I break things down into smaller steps, they all could do it. And if they couldn't do it, then I had to try harder. And I got better at it. And so for each of you here, you're here because you're connected to FASD in some way. I give this teaching to you to put into your heart and to remember in the times that are difficult and in the times that are wonderful, that each of us is a teacher to the other, and that in Creator's world, we are exactly the way that we need to be. That's the teaching that I wanted to share with you today.
Wow, thank you so much, Grandmother Pahan. What a wonderful, for sharing your knowledge with us, and what a beautiful teaching, and what a wonderful place for this discussion today to come to, a beautiful note to kind of wrap us up on. And thank you, Lori, for sharing your story and your wisdom with us, and Sharon for sharing all that that you shared today. That was just a fabulous way to spend some time together today. So I do want to invite, if anyone has any questions, to please put that in the chat, and I'll try to kind of facilitate some questions in the next little bit of our time together. While people are typing, I'll just make a couple of statements here. So one is that you will receive a survey to evaluate the session. If you could provide us with your feedback, we really appreciate your input and your comments. It does help us in planning our future sessions and thinking about a few, like other directions to take and topics to cover. So please do provide us with some feedback. If you'd like to become a member of the coalition, please contact Kim, who can help get the membership forms to you. And the email for that I can put in the chat. It's coordinator@fasdcoalition.ca. I'll type that into the chat, and then you'll be kept up to date on any of our future events that way. And then the next workshop is going to be held on February 25th. Dr. Kapasi will be presenting on youth with FASD and self-regulation, which should be another fabulous session. So we hope to see you all there. And I'm just going to put into the chat here before I forget the right email address if you would like to become a member. And I see a couple of things popping up into the chat box there. So there's a question about, are there older materials to possibly graphic novels for talking about FASD with your child or with your youth? And I'll put that to our speakers if they're aware of any materials or resources for older youth.
I could jump in there. We do have a comic book that was produced some time ago. I can't even remember, over 10 years ago for sure. And it certainly is available from our program. Anita, would it be best for people to just send an email to our program email?
Yes, I'm going to include in the chat the email address.
Perfect.
Yeah, and it's also available electronically. But
right, okay. Thank you.
And I think too, I'm not sure, I might have missed that this is what was said, but there is the website, the This Is Me. Is that what was just mentioned there? Andrea,
No.
no, but that can be another, it's an online platform. It's like a self-guided learning tool that would be something that you could work through alongside with an older adolescent or young adult to help learn it. It's not something that, again, kids should be necessarily navigating on their own, but something that can maybe go along with the conversation that you're having with an older teen or youth.
Mhm. That's a really good resource. It has little, very visual vignettes that can be discussed. And yeah, thanks, Laura, for bringing that up.
And I know we have, not to put anyone on the spot, but if any of our team from FASD Center here have any thoughts that are coming to mind, feel free to put that in the chat as well, or send us some ideas. There's a question as well about, well, thank you, Anita, for putting the email address in the chat there. And another question about for the This Is Me booklets that I think Sharon mentioned. Is it available in DVD or on USB? And then sometimes, oh, the This Is Me, like the one we were just talking about, having trouble accessing it due to Wi-Fi issues.
Right.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's no longer available on DVD because it was we were able to put it online. Wonder if we can problem solve that. If someone is interested in that format, maybe if you can email directly to the email that Anita put up there, that would be great.
Anita, you have your hand raised there. If you want to chime in, feel free.
Hi, it's Anita. Ironically, we just had a recent request exactly asking if there was any way to have the This Is Me on a kind of a flash drive because of those challenges for rural communities. And I did indicate that I would kind of check this out. I'm assuming there would be cost involved with that. I don't know how possible it is, but I will be investigating it.
Great, thank you. I'm going to put the web link for the This Is Me for folks who want to check it out as well into the chat there. Do we have any other questions or comments from the group? Okay, well, thank you again so much to our presenters. That was just so fabulous, so wonderful. I've got pages of notes here from everything that was shared today, and that's great. And oh, I'm going to see if there's some. Yeah, so if again, our next session is on the 25th, and so you can look for some information about that, and hopefully we'll see you there. And wishing everybody a warm and good weekend out there, and take care. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks, everybody.